I want to watch the news.
Are you making headway at least?
This is the news.
Schmack-a-magob, it's time for the only news that matters. And from day one, John Lennon was vicious toward most of his work with the Beatles. Ever since the breakup of the iconic band, Lennon was known to be particularly savage toward any of the Fab Four's greatest hits, even spitting bile toward his own compositions. Of all the wonderful songs that the band had written, Lennon regretted one track greatly because of a faltering vocal performance. Then again, Lennon was always self-conscious about his voice when he was in the Beatles. For most of their catalog together, Lennon insisted on having every single vocal take double tracked because he wasn't confident singing with only one voice on the final product. While Lennon was getting comfortable in his own skin toward the end of the group's run, the band's plan to create Abbey Road never sat well with him. Although he did have praise for several of his songs like Come Together, Lennon had no time for the melody on side 2 of the vinyl, thinking that it was completely unnecessary compared to the rest of the material. Before getting to the grand finale, each member brings their A game to their own songs, with George Harrison sparkling on the song Something. Though every other member of the Beatles moaned through Paul McCartney's Maxwell Silver Hammer, Lennon thought that Old Darlin' had the potential to be much better than it turned out. Going for the sound of the blues singers they idolized as kids, McCartney employs a searing scream for most of the song, featuring a few pain shrieks toward the end of the track. Though McCartney may have given it his all, Lennon thought it was never suited to McCartney's tone. When asked about the song later, Lennon had a few regrets about not singing the song instead, recalling, "Oh Darling was a great one of Paul's that he didn't sing too well. I always thought that I could have done it better. It was more my style than his. He wrote it, so what the hell? He's going to sing it. If he'd had any sense, he should have had me sing it." While Lennon wasn't fond of the final result, McCartney thought that he captured just the right emotion he was looking for in the song. Since the song is supposed to be from the perspective of a soulful singer, McCartney tried several passes at the song to give the impression that he had been singing it in clubs for weeks. McCartney would later refute Lennon's claim, saying, "I tried it every which way and finally got the vocals. I was reasonably happy with it. It's a bit of a belter and it came off lukewarm. Then you've missed the whole point. It was unusual for me. I would normally try all the goes at the vocals in one day." The raw performance style also turned up later in McCartney's solo catalog, becoming a fixture in his songs like Maybe I'm Amazed and later Call Me Back Again from the Venus and Mars album. Although McCartney may have unlocked a voice he didn't know he had, the thought of Lennon singing this belter feels like a match made in heaven. Well, I think that Lennon's crazy. I mean, I'm sure, could have done a great job with Old Darlin', but better than what McCartney did with that screaming and stuff? I really, really doubt that he can improve what McCartney did, because McCartney was like really gritty and screaming his ass off, man. I'm telling you, it's like one of his greatest performances ever that I highly doubt John Lennon can top. But we'll never know now, will we? Because he never did record it. And yes, I've read many Lennon interviews and heard him talk bad about many, many Beatles songs, like he hates It's Only Love. My God, I mean, yeah, everybody's got their opinions, but man, he wrote a masterpiece. that he hates now. And I love Run For Your Life. There's many, many songs. And then there's a lot of McCartney songs he calls granny music, like, you know, Your Mother Should Know. Yeah, it seems like everybody hated the Beatles after the Beatles except for, well, I guess half of them. Because Ringo and Paul never talked bad about the Beatles, but George Harrison sure did many, many times. And Lennon did many, many times. And I'm sorry, y'all didn't do better than the Beatles. I don't think, honestly. I think John Lennon's my favorite Beatle, man. But after the Beatles, he was nowhere near as good as Paul. This is just my opinion, because I know a lot of people like Lennon more and like George more. Not me. To me, I love the Wing stuff. I love the Ram. I loved his first album. I thought McCartney was the clear winner of the solo artists after the Beatles. So, there you go. Lennon doesn't like the way McCartney sang Oh Darling, said he could have done it better. I guess we'll never know now, will we? But anyway, thank you so much for watching The Only News That Matters. And please subscribe to my channel if you haven't. And click the little notification bell. And like the video for the YouTube algorithms. And stay frosty. Listen to Black Sabbath. And smack 'em a gob.
Farewell and adieu to you fair Spanish ladies.
Farewell and adieu, you ladies of Spain. For we've received orders for to sail back to Boston. And so never more shall we see you again.
Before we get canceled, check out the Rock and Metal Combat Podcast with me and Wadzilla. We are the Podcast Kings. Link to the podcast is in the description below, and also a link to the YouTube page. Check out older episodes with visuals. And very soon, either Ian and I will learn how to go on YouTube Live. Might be soon. So check out the greatest podcast ever according to Science.com. It's also God's favorite podcast and Satan's favorite podcast as well. So check out the Rock and Metal Combat Podcast before we get canceled.